but we will see some of that moisture moving east by tonight and into the day tomorrow. Sacramento, you're going to hold on to it into the day on Thursday before clearing out a bit into the weekend. But remember that little spoiler alert we were talking about? Sunday into Monday, we've got more rain in the forecast with temperatures hanging out in the low to mid 60s. Here's a look at the front at the surface as it pulls to the east overnight. We'll continue to see that heavy rainfall, that atmospheric river pumping in the rainfall totals and taking up those snowfall rates into the evening and overnight hours. Southern California, increasing cloud cover. Northern parts of Nevada kind of keeping that cloud cover for themselves into the early hours of Thursday. Overnight low temperatures, 40s in the north, 50s in the valley, 60s in the south. We're going to see some very mild temperatures in Southern California over the next couple of days, despite the increase in cloud cover expected into the daytime tomorrow. That front, that energetic trough continue to slide their way east with more rain and snow in the forecast. Thursday's highs, once again, 50s in the north, but 70s for LA and San Diego.
On this Wednesday evening, beautiful sunny skies, Old Glory looking gorgeous on the bottom left-hand side of your screen. And yes, on the right, that certainly looks like an eagle to me out there in the Quad Cities, Davenport, Iowa, and where we've been seeing some of those winds. You might notice those trees rattling around. That's out ahead of our next cold front, which could bring that threat for severe weather. How about that for a tie-in?
I know, and windy wet weather here over the next couple of days. Couple of fronts, more active weather as we get you into further into fall, and each bringing a pretty cold shot of air too. Yeah, and this time of year, this is a little underrated. We've been trying to emphasize this over the last few days, that this time of year we can see severe weather. It's not the end of severe weather season. We tend to think about April, May, and June, and appropriately so. But this time of year, I remember back in 2013, the awful tornado outbreak we had in northern Illinois. Fortunately, so far this November, it's been, for the most part, fairly calm. Yeah, I guess you need a little bit more variables to tie in just perfectly. And let's talk about this here, starting with the wet weather that we do have here across parts of Cincinnati and Ohio with this first front, then we'll get to the next one for the weekend. 50 degrees, southwest wind at 10, humidity 96%. So we are looking at, again, at some damp weather in the greater Cincinnati area. In Martin, Tennessee, 54 with a humidity at 100%. So with the recent rain, there could be some thick fog left behind for tonight as we're tracking a few scattered showers moving across the state of Michigan. Oregon, also moving into upstate New York. Quick moving rain. It blasted through Pittsburgh with some brief downpours, but again, shouldn't be anything severe with that as that does move through. What to watch for, though, tomorrow as it moves into New England is a quick moving coastal low that could, well, depending on elevation and temperatures, could bring briefly heavy snowfall here in terms of some of the mountains in northern New England, certainly southeastern Quebec, so it's a kind of a near miss for any big snows out there. But we're talking about that also in our Weather Nation Now. It's here in just a couple of minutes. But the big east cool down from this front. This one's going to be moving across the country over the next few days, and we are watching every piece of it for you. Right now, we're looking at some heavy rain in the valleys and lower elevations and mountain snow that's really coming on shore parts of California, Oregon, into Washington. It'll continue over the next 24 hours, and by tomorrow into Friday, well, that starts to eject down into the plains, and that's when we start to watch, well, can we tap into some Gulf of Mexico moisture, align those winds just right. And right now, it looks like we're going to avoid most of the severe weather. Again, things on Friday night, not looking terrible in our weather models. If we were to see a line of yellows and reds, we'd indicate, well, a red flag here for some of that severe weather. But it does look like, again, some general thunderstorms late on Friday. We'll have to watch that on Saturday. Maybe a little better chance into the Ohio Valley, into Kentucky and Tennessee. So we'll have to see as that moves to the east. And then by Saturday into Sunday, that brings some scattered rain showers. With that front, we're going to be looking at about 1 to 2 inches of rainfall, especially highest in the yellow areas into the Ohio Valley. And in terms of any snowfall, again, really a little bit too warm for a lot of it, but northern New England, again, we could pick up some nice snow for some of those ski resorts, hoping to open by Thanksgiving. But I want to take you here across the west and also, again, show you Nashville, Tennessee here as we're looking at that first front. Watch out for some fog tonight. And then really a thunderstorm outlook, general risks the next few days, Chris.
Yeah, Steve, this is a tail end of that front that you were mentioning, but overall the severe weather threats just aren't there. I'll explain why in just a second, but as we get into your day tomorrow, the I-5 corridor is always, sometimes we can get, in fact, back in Lincoln City, Oregon, back on Monday with that first system, we did have a water spout. No reports of damage from it, but we can often see those water spouts, those low top cells, sometimes can bring in some of that hail as well, but overall the severe weather parameters aren't there. Friday, Steve was telling you about the system here across the Midwest. A couple things about it. The temperatures just aren't there. We're talking about temperatures that are going to be in the 50s and 60s. The timing isn't there either for, at this point, something that doesn't appear to be overwhelmingly strong in terms of that severe weather threat, but Chicago, St. Louis, Peoria, Champaign-Urbana, Gary, Indiana, maybe even into Indy as well. Don't be surprised you hear a rumble of thunder, but the severe weather at this point just doesn't appear to be there, and that is certainly some great news. We're happy to tell you about the fact that we've got a fairly tame severe weather season, or fairly tame secondary season severe weather-wise, but we've already had so far here in 2017 the most tornadoes nationwide since 2011. So the beginning of the year is very active. Hey, we can take a little bit of a breather here in the second half of the year here in Mother Nature. Lows here on your Friday. Again, this is part of the reason behind the system. We do cool down. Saturday start to warm back up again. Temperatures like this, it's hard to get that severe weather threat much higher than what it is. Syracuse, New York. Hey, we could be talking about some lake effect snow out in your region. First, perhaps, event of the year on the way for us in upstate New York. Details coming up.
Pictures from earlier this week on Monday from Whidbey Island, Washington. Look at the winds just kicking up the surf, the waves smashing across the dock. Just pretty amazing power right there. And this is really in advance of storm systems coming off the Pacific Ocean. So on Monday, wasn't quite there yet, but that was kind of a bit of weather foreshadowing for things to come. And then Rockaway Beach, Oregon, this was yesterday. Some surf coming in, the cloud cover thickening up. Yeah, the sea's getting a little more angry in advance of the system. And then today, of course, we've seen a lot of rainfall. In fact, over the past 24 hours, look at all these rain reports coming in from Washington. 2, 3, upwards of 4 inches of rain, and it's still coming down in many spots. Welcome back here to Weather Nation. Meteorologist Matt Monroe with your Northwestern forecast. And these are pictures from earlier today. Eugene, Oregon, home right there of the University of Oregon. Just cloudy and damp and dreary. Rain continues to come down. The sidewalks there pretty wet. Umbrellas are up. The students were smart to be carrying those. And most of the rain in the northwest has been confined to Seattle, Portland, down through Salem. Most of the rest of the area in the region has actually been pretty dry, but boy, that's about to change. About everybody is going to get in on the action here, if not already, really soon, because of this cold front right here, which is working right across Washington and Oregon. So this is by later on tonight, Wednesday evening. Lots of rain in the valleys and potentially plenty of snow piling up in the mountains and also the higher elevations. So we're watching this to continue late tonight, overnight, in throughout the day tomorrow. And that's kind of wave number one. There's actually more moisture coming in off the Pacific Ocean behind that. But this is through about 6 o'clock on Thursday morning. Snow in Idaho, snow in western Montana, snow across the Cascades, and then again, more rain in the valleys as you go along. Today's high temperatures, they were actually kind of cool. 50 today in Seattle, 49 Portland, Salem, Eugene, 50 in Bend, 43 Salmon, Idaho, 50 down the road in Twin Falls, 51 in Boise, upper 40s in Idaho Falls. And then later on tonight, it's getting pretty chilly in most locations. Lower 40s, Seattle, Portland, Salem, Eugene, 34 Baker City, 40 in Lewiston, and then 42 in Twin Falls, 43 out across Pocatello. All right, this is now Thursday morning, 7 o'clock in the morning. You see another piece of energy coming off the Pacific Ocean. So again, it's another day of rain in the valleys and snow back in the mountains. Some of interior Washington, Oregon gets kind of a break, but look at even Lakeview, eventually Burns, Bend. Snow is really close to you folks as well, and it continues to push in through Idaho and also western Montana. Now we're into, of course, early on Friday morning. This is about 6 a.m. and the snow continues to come down in Idaho, Montana, close to Baker City, the Blue Mountains right here of northeastern Oregon, and then more rain, Portland, Salem, Eugene, and Seattle, potentially a rain-snow mix in the mountains by that point. Thursday high temperatures, these are kind of raw too. 49 Seattle, 50 Portland, 49 degrees in Eugene. Of course, we have to keep in mind it's now mid-November. These are pretty much where they should be. 50 in Lewiston, lower 50s in Boise, 49 in Idaho Falls, and 50 out across Pocatello. Friday morning, early morning lows, 41 Seattle, 41 Salem, upper 30s around Eugene, lower 30s in Bend, below the freezing mark there, and also getting kind of cold around Burns, Baker City, back in the mid to upper 20s, Boise at 35, Salmon, Idaho does about 26. Okay, here's your Friday forecast. Things start to wind down a little bit. You'll see a lot of the moisture pretty much drying up, but still there's a flow of moisture coming across the Olympic Range in through Seattle and also Tacoma, and then a little bit more snow out across northern Idaho and also the mountains of western Montana. But again, by Saturday morning early, now we're into Saturday afternoon, things should be fairly quiet by that point. So just kind of hang in there for Thursday and Friday. Saturday looks to be a lot better. Friday high temperatures, 50 Portland, Salem, Eugene, 41 Baker City, upper 30s in Salmon, pretty chilly, also upper 30s Idaho Falls and Pocatello. So here's the forecast accumulation. We're talking rainfall here, 1 to 2, 2 to 4 inches of rain, especially right in here. I-5, Portland, Salem, Eugene, very heavy soaking rainfall there for the next couple of days. Maybe 1 to 3 inches, 1 to 2 inches for Boise and points off to the south of that. And some of that actually turns into snow. So these are the snowfall accumulations, potentially 12 to 18 inches of snow in the northern Cascades, 8 to 12 inches south of that, 6 to 12 around the Sawtooth Range, 8 to 12 inches out across the Bitter Roots. So here you go, Seattle, your extended forecast. Average high, 51, we'll do the upper 40s. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 50 by Sunday with rain.
We haven't really seen much in the way of lake effect snow so far this season. That's going to likely change as we get over the next few days. Syracuse, we haven't seen any snow so far this season, at least not any measurable snowfall, but Syracuse, gear on up as, it's that time of year. We usually start to see that snow flying here late October, early November. Again, haven't really quite seen it yet. We've seen plenty of cold temperatures here, meteorologist Steve Glazier, but the snow hasn't come yet. And as I mentioned, we finally may see that first first lake effect setup later on this week.
It's true. We talk about severe weather season in the spring especially, but lake effect snow, I mean, this time of the year, the water's still warm. You can get those cold Canadian rushes of air. So this is the time of the year it starts to get going.
And I know you love that, Steve. I know you love your lake effect snow. I mean, I like it too, but let's take a look here. Steve went to school in Vermont, so that's off of Champlain. Right, Steve? Champlain for you? Champlain for the Linden Staters up there. Went to school in Boston, so we didn't really get so much in the way of that. Meantime, you probably don't care about that, but you do care about the jet stream starting to dip a little further off towards the south. What that's going to do, it's going to bring in that cooler air that Steve was talking about, that cold Canadian air going to rush its way on in, and as a result, you get that cold wind going over the relatively warm and unfrozen lake waters here of the Great Lakes. That's your classic setup for that lake effect snow, and certainly the cold air is going to be there. It's going to feel more like the middle to end part of December. It's going to feel more like Christmas than just a couple weeks before. We're just a week before Thanksgiving. Time flies when you're having fun, I suppose, but those temps, again, really dipping down for places like Chicago. High of 40 coming up here on your Friday. You make your way into the Northeast. Certainly some chilly temperatures out here as well. There's a look at some of those temperatures. Look at Chicago by your Sunday down to 34. Yikes. Buffalo down to 40, and Sunday a high of just 38 degrees. So again, you get the idea that the colder air mass is certainly going to be settling its way on through, and that's where it is right now. Minneapolis, the Dakotas, where high temperatures will likely only top out in the 20s in some spots as we get into your day tomorrow. That cold air along this cold front going to continue to swing its way off towards the east. Out ahead of it, we do have some showers, even some rumbles of thunder making their way through western Pennsylvania, upstate New York, and down through places like West Virginia as well. Those showers will continue to slide their way off towards the east, and with it, the possibility for some snow as we get later on into your Friday, beginning with some of that here on your Friday. Again, notice maybe some of the higher elevations in the south towns, the Finger Lakes, the Adirondacks, the Green White Mountains, seeing some of that snowfall, but a secondary burst of snowfall will most likely be beneficial for some of the northern New England locations like Mount Washington, as well as Sunday River, some of the ski resorts up in northern Vermont. That's going to be Stowe, Smuggler's Notch, some of those locations, Jay Peak as well, could be seeing some of that snowfall. So for skiers out east, I know you're going, yes, finally. How about the UP of Michigan, Keweenaw Peninsula? Looks like we could end up with over half a foot of snow before all is said and done. In northern New England out here as well, looking at some of that snowfall. And so, Steve, these are going to be some of the spots that end up with some of those biggest snowfall amounts this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, upstate Maine, northern New England, interior sections here, northern Vermont, New Hampshire, into Maine, as Chris was mentioning, from Sugarloaf to the Brenton Woods, and also even down to maybe even Mount Snow there. Some good news, especially a lot of these resorts like to open up here for Thanksgiving week, which is already next week, already a week around the corner. So again, we're dealing with a couple of fronts, in fact, two big ones. The surface front here, not necessarily a lot of cold air right back behind it, but it's the secondary front back up to the north and west where that real, again, much colder Canadian air certainly lies at the moment. So again, as we take you into Thursday, into Friday, that first system does exit. High pressure does bring back in some colder weather. We'll get some lake effect activity from the first front on Thursday and Friday. Not a lot because the winds are weaker. The air is, like I mentioned, not as cold. It's that next batch that does start to come in that really is going to bring some of the colder weather. When you have a bigger difference between those waters that are still unfrozen and the air temperatures, that's when we're talking about, again, some better snowfall rates and higher snowfall rates. Again, an early glance at some of these lake effect snow totals, again, especially coming off of Erie and Ontario, anywhere downwind of them, which are going to be to the east and southeast. Heads up from Watertown to Syracuse, especially as you get into Rochester, Buffalo, Erie. Again, we could be talking about up to several inches. We'll have to see where those bands do set up. Sometimes they can be very finicky and very localized. But as you can see, as we look at your Thanksgiving week temperatures, it's going to be feeling a little bit more like Thanksgiving across the East Coast, while we're expecting a little warmer weather across the West.